Growing up, some of my favorite movies were Kung Fu Hustle, One Missed Call, Signs, Shaun of the Dead, and Airplane. But there was one movie that contributed to my fascination with Japanese culture and history, and that movie was Pokemon 2000. I'm pretty sure that movie was the first time I experienced real pain, from Pikachu not wanting to fight his twin, to Ash turning into stone. After watching that, and experiencing even more pain from watching the Rugrats movie, I learned what pain really was at a very young age, but that's a story for another video. After learning about Pokemon and venturing down the Japanese game rabbit hole, I became so infatuated with Japanese media and their history. I also plan to make a video going over my favorite childhood Japanese games and horror films, which I'm super excited about. As I grew up, I slowly lost my love for the Pokemon series, and after a random thought, I had wondered if any of the Pokemon are actually based on real Japanese folklore, and boy, there's a lot. We are going to be talking about most, if not every Pokemon that is based on Japanese lore. I was very surprised by how many there were, and maybe I'm the only one that didn't realize, but I figured this would be a fun, different kind of video to make, to get away from the gruesome real world of crime and depravity. So grab a snack and get cozy, because this is going to be a long one. I think some people may have made this connection based on appearance alone, as it kind of has that feel of being based on something. The Chochin Obake is a paper lantern ghost, and are formed when the lantern gets split and a mouth takes its place, with a long tongue. They are commonly depicted as having 2 eyes, and having even been seen with a torso, hands, and wings as well. There actually aren't legends about this creature, and they're known as the yokai that exists only in pictures. People believe they are a type of yokai that were simply created to scare children. This object-based spirit comes from the specific type of yokai known as tsukumogami, which are yokai that are the cause of inanimate objects becoming sentient and self-aware. After serving their owner or household for 100 years, the transformation begins. Depending on how the object was created, it can either be good or evil. There's many types of these object spirits, such as umbrellas, mirrors, stringed instruments, and even shoes. My childhood favorite Pokemon is a ghost-type Pokemon that for some reason I just really appreciated as a child, and definitely plays a small role in my love for the paranormal. The scene where Ash is in that haunted house and he learns about Haunter, Gengar, and Ghastly is such a classic moment in the show. Ghastly is loosely based on Sookenbi, also known as Sogen's Fire. Many years ago, a monk named Sogen, who lived in the now Mibudera Temple in Kyoto, and unlike other monks, Sogen was a wicked one, and not in a cool surfer dude kind of way. He would often steal offerings from the temple's Saisen Bako, the large wooden boxes you see at the base of the temple. This went on for many years, even making a profit on stolen oil that was meant as an offering to the gods. Eventually, he grew old and passed away, and many people say he was sent to hell to burn for eternity. Many people claim you can sometimes see his floating head floating around the Mibudera shrine. So if you're going to Japan soon, definitely make a stop here if you want to take in a cool bit of Japanese folklore. Exeggutor, another Gen 1 Pokemon, may not be what you think it is. Despite evolving from Execute, a cluster of bird eggs or something the like, Once it evolves to Executor, its inspiration becomes a little more clear. You're probably thinking, a plant or a tree with egg faces can't possibly be on Japanese folklore, right?
Wrong!
Allow me to introduce the Jimenju, also known as the human-faced tree. Most notably, it appears in the Edo period's Konjaku Hyaki Shui, or supplement to the 100 demons from the present and the past, and is the third book of Japanese artist Toriyama Sekin. A passage from the section about the Jimenju.
三国にあり、その花人の首のごとし、物言い外してただ笑うことしきりなり、しきりに笑えばそのまま落下すという。
This tree is known for bearing flowers that resemble human heads, and any attempt to communicate with them would only be answered with more laughter and smiles. If they laugh too much, they will wither and fall to the ground, still laughing even after impact. Very similar to Execute in appearance. So all in all, it's just a cute tree that likes to laugh. If you're familiar with the Japanese language, you might have figured out that this Pokemon's name is actually the name of the legend it was based on, and bears a very similar resemblance. The Yukiwarashi is one of the cuter yokai, with a somewhat happy story, and an adorable counterpart. This Japanese legend goes as follows. There was a couple who lived together and could not bear a child, and as they grew older, so did their loneliness, feeling as though their home would never be complete. One evening, the couple decided to go outside into the freshly fallen snow and build a little snowman to pass the time. After entering their home for the night, a very intense blizzard had come their way, and within the strong winds, they heard what sounded like knocking on their door. Confused, the man opened the door, and to his surprise, was a little child seeking shelter from the storm, and as anyone would, sheltered this child in their home, providing warmth, security, and food. They were happy as ever, as if their prayers were answered, and all through winter, they played games, ate delicious, hearty dinners, and enjoyed every moment together. As spring rolled around and the smell of newly grown flowers began to rise, the child had gone outside to take in the warmer weather. After some time, the couple began to worry and searched for their adopted child, only to never hear from them again. That was until winter rolled back around. They soon realized this child was a product of their creation and was only alive in the winter. With this knowledge, they waited winters and dreaded the spring, until one winter, their child never returned. At first they were overwhelmed with sadness, until they began to appreciate and cherish the memories spent with their winter child for the rest of their lives. There's also another form of this creature, or child I guess, known as the Yukimbo, or Snow Boy, and they say he is the reason for tree wells. He spends his time hopping around on his one foot in his mino, or straw raincoat, circling the trees, unaware of the tree well that forms beneath him. So overall, this yokai is extremely adorable and gives me so much more appreciation for it as a whole. Bronzor made its debut in Generation 4 as a Steel/Psychic type, and at first glance, he just looks like a piece of metal from a factory of some kind, but I had no idea he was based on the Ungai Kyo, or Mirror Beyond the Clouds. The sole purpose of this mirror is to show the reflection of demons and monsters, and is often used to trap those same spirits in the mirror.
It is used to expose or reveal the true forms of demons who are attempting to manifest themselves as humans and to go undetected. In ancient China, King Zhao had used this mirror on his beloved Da Ji. This is when it was revealed to him that she was actually an evil nine-tailed fox whose intentions were to completely ruin and destroy his kingdom. After the discovery, she was forced to flee the country, which eventually landed her in Japan as Tamamo no Mae. There isn't much information on this mirror, but some believe there are real ones out there, since many inanimate objects gain consciousness after reaching a certain point in age. Emerging from Gen 1, and among one of the most original Pokemon, coming in at 0096 in the Pokedex, Drowsy is a Pokemon we can all relate to, as his Japanese name is the English word for sleep. This Pokemon is one of the only ones, if not the only one, that is based on a real animal first, then turned into a Japanese cryptid. Baku, in Japanese, are supernatural beings that are believed to eat the nightmares of children, or people who call upon it to devour the nightmares that had awoken them in the morning. According to legend, they were initially based on the Chinese mole, a giant tapir from the 3rd century BCE, which was later identified as the Malayan tapir. It is believed the animal was created from all the spare parts of other animals after the gods had finished creating every other animal on their list. The animal is said to have the trunk and tusks of an elephant, ears of a rhinoceros, the tail of a cow, body of a bear, and the paws of a tiger. So it's just an amalgamation of all these other animals for some reason. If you ever wake up from a nightmare, you can do as the Japanese children would do and say, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." The Baku is seen as a symbol of good luck, guardianship, and protection. An alternative depiction of the creature, as if it is called too many times, it may devour the summoner's hopes and dreams, as well as their nightmares, especially if it remains hungry after the act. At first, Dunsparce might just seem like another little bug or snake Pokemon with no significance. And if you're a Dunsparce fan, I'm so sorry, but I thought the exact same thing. I always avoided catching this guy in Pokemon Go. Turns out, they bear a resemblance to the Tsuchinoko, or the Child of Hammer. These snake-like things can range anywhere from 12 to 31 inches, but with the central girth that is much wider than the head and tail, and has fangs like a viper. Some accounts state it can even jump a distance of 3 feet and even perform a double jump. According to legend, they can even speak and have an affinity for lying, as well as having a strong desire to drink alcohol. This being has been reported as recent as 1980 and even led to the Tsuchinoko expedition, where about 200 people set out to capture evidence of its existence, with the $7,800 reward for its capture. Nothing was found, but the Shimokitayama Tsuchinoko Park was opened in 2023 to commemorate the expedition and those who partook in the search. So overall, this little snake-like Pokemon from Gen 2 has some pretty cool lore, despite its unassuming appearance. Zigzagoon arose in Generation 3 as a normal type Pokemon, but the animal it's based on is far from normal. It actually rivals the fox in terms of most popular yokai. The Tanuki, which may become your new favorite animal, is often wrongfully confused with a raccoon or badger, when it's actually part of the canine family. They are shy and nocturnal, and are said to roam across all of Japan. Again, These are real animals, and I'm making it a mission to actually see one starting now. The folklore side of animals are said to have magical powers, similar to that of the Kitsune. They have the ability to change into practically any shape, enjoy playing tricks on humans, and, the best part, they get all their power from their testicles. These testicles can be used for whatever need that fits. They are used as weapons, drums, fans, fishing nets, and an umbrella. There's really nothing they can't do. Before Buddhism, the Tanuki were considered gods and ruled over all things nature, and changed their role to messengers for gods and guardians of the local area. It wouldn't be a Japanese folklore if they also didn't have an evil side though. Some stories claim they like to eat humans, or kidnap them and force them to become servants to their god, as well as living amongst humans in human form, without ever revealing themselves. It will sometimes transform into trees, rocks, or statues, and play tricks on people in that way as well. So if you trip over a rock, just know it might be a tanuki messing with you. Another connection to Zigzagoon is the fact that they don't walk straight, and since the tanuki is your average alcohol enjoyer, this could be why Zigzagoon doesn't run in a straight line. Now on to my favorite collection of Pokemon. The evolutions have always been a favorite of mine. I've always gravitated towards the cuter Pokemon in the show, and Espeon is tied for favorites within the evolutions, along Leafeon. Regardless, there are two types of cat yokai, the Nekomata and the Bakaneko. There's not many ways to tell which is which, aside from one distinction. The Nekomata has a split tail, and sometimes two tails, just like Espeon. Certain regions in Japan have different ages where domesticated house cats can live or be raised until they turn into a Bakaneko. Some locals will even go as far as deciding how long they are able to adopt the cat for to see if it lines up with the local legend's ages, and to see if they're able to have the cat for a substantial amount of time before it turns into a yokai. The Nekomata has been around as far back as the 1200s, originating in Japan. On August 2nd, 1233, what is now Nara Prefecture, a Nekomata was said to have killed several people in the night, and had eaten them, as well. In what is considered a gem of Japanese literature, the Tsurezuregusa states,
奥山に猫又というものありて、人を食うなると人の言いけるに。
Domestic cats become Nekomata once they grow old, and mountainous Nekomata have been interpreted as house cats that ran away to live in the mountains, and as a result, some locals believe cats should not be kept for long periods of time. This yokai is said to have powers of necromancy, the ability to raise the dead, and be able to control them with ritualistic dances, with the use of its tails and paws. Some people even associate strange fires with the Nekomata, claiming it may be revenge for its previous experiences. The older and more abused a cat is before transformation, the more powerful the yokai becomes afterwards, and can even assume human appearances and just cause overall tomfoolery wherever they go. Due to this, sometimes kittens' tails were cut off, believing if the cat had no tail, it could not split into two and become a yokai. So overall, just a pretty cool cat. It does some cool stuff. Let me know what your favorite evolution is in the comments. This ice ghost from Generation 4, Froslass, should be a lot easier to spot in Japanese folklore. Since she evolves from a female Snorant, the little ice child, it makes sense for her evolution to be representative of none other than the Yuki-onna, Its Japanese name, meaning snow girl or snow woman, should also be a dead giveaway. There are so many kinds of stories regarding the Yuki-onna. Everything from a lonely woman looking to marry a man only to leave once he reveals her secret, to a lonely woman who takes children away if they're playing outside alone in winter. A majority of stories all share the same idea: an extremely beautiful woman with long black hair, soft smooth skin, and the ideal woman to marry, which is why so many men in these tales fall for her tricks. She's said to have ice-cold skin, but once in human form, she looks like any other girl in any prefecture. As many Japanese ghosts, she's also said to have no feet, thus leaving no trace of her as she travels through the snow silently. There isn't much good that comes from this yokai, as she's almost always dangerous and kills for the thrill of it, and will do anything she can to lure men to their deaths. In one story though, she spares a young man's life to his beauty and age. After promising to never speak to her, he later in life tells his wife about the experience. Unbeknownst to him, his wife was actually Yuki-onna, but instead of leaving or killing him, she chooses to stay due to their children. She makes sure to let him know that if he mistreats them, she will be forced to show no mercy a third time. So overall, kind of just a badass snow woman, and has been utilized in many pop culture movies and shows. If you're a fan of anything Japanese, at some point you've learned who Yuki-onna is. In the 1973 film Lady Snowblood, which draws connections to Yuki-onna loosely in my opinion, has the main character named Yuki, who takes revenge on the men who sexually assaulted her mother and murdered her half-brother. She was born during a snowstorm, wants to kill people, albeit for an actual reason, and is a woman, so. It's one of my favorite Japanese movies. Highly recommend if you like their older style of film. So Froslass is probably one of the cooler Pokemon with a yokai connection, despite my hatred for most newer Pokemon. I still don't even know what this is. This goofy little guy is probably the least goofy when it comes to his actions. Lombre is a water and grass type Pokemon and has a very distinct lily pad on his head. This is a dead giveaway for its inspiration. The Kappa, also known as River Child, River Boy, Horse Puller, River Tiger, or Water Tiger, is a reptilian kami or deity who becomes harmful and evil if they are not respected as gods. They are depicted as green human-like creatures with webbed hands and feet and a shell on their backs. The biggest connection? The Kappa also has a small indent on the top of their head that act as a dish for water. This is how the Kappa keeps its power, and if it is damaged or the water spills, the Kappa becomes extremely weakened and may even die from the lack of water. There is so much lore about this thing, so I'm going to yap for a second because this thing is so freaking cool. The Kappa are known to enjoy cucumbers and partake in sumo wrestling. They are often accused of assaulting humans, and the way they do this is by removing the mythical organ called the shirikodama, or small anus ball. Yeah, this thing literally goes into your ass and removes a small hardened magical ball that every soul is said to obtain in Japanese folklore that for some reason exists in your rectum. These creatures thrive near ponds or rivers and aren't as functional on land. Their behavior goes from mischievous to downright evil. Everything from looking up women's kimono to abducting children, eating people, and raping women. During some festivals, cucumber offerings to the Kappa are one of the main purposes, and in the Edo period, there was a tradition where people would write their names and family members on cucumbers and send them afloat into the ocean and streams to prevent the Kappa from harming them. Ironically enough, the Kappa are obsessed with politeness, and one of the ways to survive a Kappa encounter is to perform a deep bow. This will cause the Kappa to reciprocate and in turn, causing it to spill the water from its head, rendering it immobile. It is believed that if someone fills his dish, the Kappa will serve that person for all eternity. Another way to defeat the water god is by ripping its arms off, as they are very easily detachable. If you go this route, the Kappa will perform favors or share knowledge in exchange for the arms. You can also accept its challenge in a sumo wrestle in exchange for your life, so there's also that. So in other words, Lombre is based on a super interesting piece of Japanese folklore. Wendigoon honestly said it best.
I complain that most of these aren't that unique. This is a turtle man who has water in a dent in his head that gives him power, and sometimes he'll just pull pranks on people, and other times he'll tear them into pieces.
This dual, ground and flying Pokemon first emerged in Generation 2, and is among many favorites in the series. After seeing its real-world inspiration, it's easy to see the resemblance, as this flying creature is inspired by the Yamikiri, a crustacean-like creature with a bird-like beak, segmented shell, and two scissor-like claws for hands. While not directly harmful to humans, they mainly enjoy cutting fish nets, mesh on doors, or mosquito nets inside Japanese homes. These flying yokai are more of a nuisance than anything. There's only a few stories about the Yamikiri, and isn't entirely confirmed on when they were first sighted. They're just annoying little guys.
This dark and ice Pokemon first came to be in Generation 2, and after hearing its inspiration, you'll understand why it was given those two attributes. The Kamaitachi, or literally sickle weasel, are yokai that rise in dust devils and cut people with their front claws, and are said to be the cause of whirlwinds and cold gusts of wind you randomly feel throughout the day. You ever feel that cold shiver that seems to almost hurt your skin? You can most likely blame the Itachi for that. In the Tohoku region, if one receives an injury from the Kamaitachi, the only way to heal the wound is by burning an old calendar and placing it on the gash. Since this yokai travels in threes, people in Hida have believed that each one was a different god that helped perform their attacks on humans. One would knock the person down, the second would cut them with a blade, and the third would put medicine on it for some reason? Just some mischievous gods playing a prank, I guess? So, this would explain not only the cold feature Sneasel has, but also his very sharp claws. Many prefectures have different stories on what the Kamaitachi are and do. A video for another time, perhaps.
These two Pokemon deserve to be together on this list, since Tornadus and Thundurus are depicted together in Japanese folklore as well. Tornadus' connection is to the Japanese god of wind, Fujin. Tornadus pretty much matches Fujin to a T, with the green skin, yellow eyes, weird sack thing, which is meant to contain the winds. Thundurus, on the other hand, is based on Raijin, the god of lightning, thunder, and storms. These godly siblings are said to be born from Izanami, the deity of both creation and death. Time for a little story time to get some lore on the family of Fujin and Raijin, because it's too cool not to talk about, and I've been waiting to talk about it. As mentioned before, Izanami was the goddess of creation and death, and her husband, Izanagi, is a deity born from gods, and a child of the 7 divine generations of Japanese mythology and folklore. The story goes as follows. Izanami had passed away giving birth to their child, and was then sent to Yomi, the shadowy land of the dead. Her husband went on an adventure to this underworld, hoping to bring her back, but what he saw literally made him run in fear. His beautiful wife had turned into a rotting form of flesh and maggots. Izanagi began to run out of this hellish landscape, while somehow his dead wife began chasing after him. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he pushes a nearby boulder to cover the entrance as his wife approached. She began screaming that every day she will kill 1,000 lives, while Izanagi responded by saying he will create 1,500 more in their place every day. Kind of a silly 5-year-old argument, to be honest. But after this encounter, Izanagi is said to have performed a ritualistic cleansing, which is where the ritual comes from whenever you enter a Shinto shrine in Japan, where locals and tourists wash themselves with water before entering the sacred area. While the husband bathed, Izanagi had given birth to the sun goddess Amaterasu from his left eye, Tsukuyomi, the moon god, from his right eye, and Susanoo, the storm god, from his nose. During Izanagi's chase, his beloved had summoned demons and Oni to help chase him down. Upon closing the entrance, a couple had escaped, and these two were named Fujin and Raijin. So while the brothers are pretty cool in their own right, the reason for their existence is even more interesting, and has me respecting the Pokemon counterparts a lot more. Raijin is also credited as helping Japan against the Mongols as well. This fiery fox is one of the more famous, more recognizable Pokemon from the first generation of Pokemon, and if you didn't guess, they have 9 tails. Inspired by a fox, it would be more appropriate to refer to it as the Kyubi no Kitsune, the 9-tailed fox. Kitsune are foxes that possess paranormal abilities, and these abilities only increase as they get older and wiser. They are known to have the ability to shapeshift into not only human form, but others as well. There's mainly 2 types of Kitsune yokai: the Zenko, which are benevolent celestial foxes commonly associated with Inari Okami, the god or goddess of rice, tea and sake, agriculture, industry, and general prosperity and worldly success. The second most common form is the Yako fox, which are the mischievous or malicious kitsune that enjoy tricking humans and committing all kinds of tomfoolery. Kitsune can have up to 9 tails, and according to some folk tales, they will only grow additional tails after it has lived 100 years, and the milestones for tails are 1, 5, 7, and finally 9. The 9-tailed fox specifically gains the ability to see and hear anything happening in the world and have infinite wisdom. After the fox reaches 1,000 years, it turns into a white and golden color and becomes a Tenko, or heavenly celestial fox. This is the most powerful form of the Kitsune, and once it evolves to this form, it will ascend to the heavens. Between the ages of 50 and 100, the Kitsune gains the ability to transform into humans, often taking on the appearance of a beautiful woman, a young girl, or an elderly man. They would even be able to impersonate a specific person if they so choose, but as a caveat, the Kitsune must place reeds, a leaf, or a skull above its head. In feudal Japan, it was common for people to believe that any woman encountered alone, specifically at dusk or night, could be a kitsune. Even today, women who have a kitsune gao, or fox face, are deemed to be very beautiful, and ascribe it to foxes in human form. In some stories, These spirits have difficulty hiding their tails once in human form, so people who believe they're in the presence of a kitsune will oftentimes look for their tail while they're drunk and being careless, or expose them to dogs, as they have a strong hatred or fear of them, causing them to revert back to form from the immense emotion they feel. Some other abilities they have, including possession, generating fire or lightning, manifestation in the dreams of others, invisibility, flight, and shapeshifting into a second moon. Other characteristics described in other stories mention them as being succubi and feed on the spirits of humans through sexual contact. The kitsune is one of the more documented spirits in Japanese folklore and are said to be faithful guardians, friends, and even lovers. The earliest mention of the kitsune goes all the way back to the Jomon period, which was between 14,000 to 300 BC. So saying there's a lot to cover with these creatures would be an understatement. The kitsune is such a fun and fascinating creature and has so much lore, so hopefully you learn something new about them and have an even greater appreciation for who they are. Now you're probably thinking, how could a fiery chicken be based on Japanese folklore? Well, you obviously don't know Japanese folklore. Because first off, what the fuck is this? Booba is originally based on the Bassan, or basa basa, being the sound you hear when the flaming bird flaps its wings. Just like Magmar, the Bassan is rarely seen by humans. It only visits nearby villages at nighttime. If you hear the sound of its wings and try to catch it, it'll disappear before you get a chance, but you also might get lucky. It's believed to live in Ehime Prefecture and has the ability to breathe a cool, non-burning fire. They mainly eat charred wood and embers, which is why it decides to visit these villages at nighttime, hoping to catch some recent fires put out for the night, so it can feast. Shifttree was first introduced in Gen 3 of the Pokemon universe, and evolves from Nuzleaf. Depending on your knowledge of Japanese folklore, this might have been one of the more obvious ones, as the inspiration for this grass type is the Japanese Tengu, which are said to be more human in appearance and less bird-like. Tengu are believed to be the reincarnated spirits of those who were too proud or arrogant in life, and are believed to find solace in trees and mountainous areas. Many people also believe that these beings were responsible for teaching the military arts to the Minamoto samurai Yoshitsune, who played a big role during the Genpei War against the Taira clan. For those who have played Warriors Orochi, this Tengu correlation is shown with one of his outfits, which references the avian characteristics the Tengu are thought to have. Originally, the Tengu comes from China, as it was initially represented as an anthropomorphic canine creature that appeared in the form of a shooting star or comet, and is considered a sign of war. An excerpt from the original Nihon Shoki, or the Chronicles of Japan, dated 720 AD. 9th year, spring and month, 23rd day. A great star floated from east to west, and there was a noise like that of thunder. The people that day said that it was the sound of the falling star. Others said that it was the earth thunder. Hereupon the Buddhist priest Bin said, "It is not the falling star, but the celestial dog, the sound of whose barking is like thunder." When it appeared, there was a famine. Nowadays, the Tengu is depicted as the red-faced, long-nosed man that we're all familiar with, but is also often associated with bird-like features, such as the long nose being depicted as a beak and having wings.
The prior form of shift tree is the very adorable in appearance Nuzleaf. As you might have guessed, he is also based on the Tengu, known as the Tengu, the crow of Tengu. These creatures are also the lesser form of Tengu and appear more bird-like rather than human, with large beaks and talons. These creatures are known for their vicious and troublemaking behavior, as they have very little respect for humans and often play tricks on them. There's a handful of stories depicting interactions with humans, and also being tricked into trading powerful items or valuable information in exchange for trinkets worth nothing. Tengu are known to overestimate their level of intelligence and often work with other yokai to accomplish various goals. They usually live in isolation and are more animalistic and barbaric than their graduated form, often said to feed on human flesh, rape, torture, and murder their victims, all in the name of fun. Other stories talk about how they enjoy dropping humans from great heights, tying children to the top of trees so passers-by can hear the screaming, but be unable to help. They also force people to eat feces and love tormenting monks and nuns, robbing temples, and attempting to seduce clergy. So next time you see a Nuzleaf, maybe think twice about catching it. Slowbro is a pink bear thing that has a tail that appears to have some sort of seashell biting him to stay attached. The inspiration for Slowbro might not be so child-friendly, but still funny nonetheless. This Pokemon is based on the Sazae Oni, or Shellfish ogre, who appears as a beautiful woman lost at sea, only to reveal her true intentions after being saved by fishermen at sea. They're a type of Obake spirit that form when certain shells reach 30 years of age. The most popular story about the Sazae is one from a group of pirates who had initially believed they rescued a drowned woman and laid her on their ship. These pirates, probably at sea for days, competed for her attention, but to their surprise, the creature had explained she is willing to have sex with all of them. Ecstatic, what came next made them very upset. She forcefully took all their testicles, and the pirates just threw her back into the ocean. She then revealed her true form, that similar to a mollusk. This then led to a trade deal, their gold for their kintama. Kintama, or testicles, are sometimes referred to as kintama, or gold balls. So the punchline for the story is, gold was bought with gold. Other stories describe the Sazame Oni as a human in disguise, who would enter inns on the coast or seaside and devour the innkeeper, escaping before the morning comes. So this handsome little guy has got a pretty cool story. Probably the most popular flying serpent and the biggest pain to evolve in Pokemon Go is Gyarados. Based on the Wani, an oceanic dragon or sea monster is not just one sea dragon, but a catch-all for these creatures swimming under the ocean. Known as the most powerful water dragon is the Ryujin. And since many Japanese people live off the bounty of the sea for millennia, this god is considered to be good and is credited for the hurricane that sunk the Mongolian flotilla sent by Kublai Khan. Ryujin is said to live in a giant palace known as Ryugu-jol, and this is built out of red and white coral, and this is where he controls the tides with jewels, sea turtles, and other aquatic wildlife. There are 2 tide jewels that exist somewhere in Japan that are used to control the tides, and according to legend, Jinju, a Japanese empress who ruled in 200 AD, utilized the Serpent's Tide's abilities to aid in the invasion of the Korean peninsula. The first emperor of Japan, Jimmu, is said to also be the grandson of Hori, who was the husband of Ryujin's daughter Toyotama Hime, making him one of the ancestors of the Japanese imperial dynasty. So, Gyarados goes pretty far back, and might be one of the coolest mentions on this list, just based on its real-world historical counterpart. Moving on to a new Pokemon type, this little steel/fairy Pokemon is from Generation 3 and is depicted as a small creature with a very interesting hairstyle. That being, hair with a mouth with razor-sharp teeth. This is a representation of the Futakuchi-onna. I'm pretty sure I talked about this one on a previous video, but I'll give a brief description anyway. This yokai is characterized as having two mouths. One where you typically have one, and one on the back of her head, beneath her hair. The woman's head splits apart and forms a full functioning mouth that screams and yells obscenities if the woman doesn't feed it, and not doing so will cause her much pain, and this spirit usually takes over women who eat very little. Eventually, her hair will begin to move like serpents, which the yokai controls to help itself to any food the woman has. It is mostly said to attach herself to wives who eat very little, and are married to misers, people who are very reluctant to spend money to the point of abandoning even basic needs and necessities. So as long as you don't marry, you should be okay, ladies. Just don't do it. Rayquaza is a Pokemon I was never too familiar with since I stopped playing the games roughly around Gen 3, but that isn't to say it's not a great looking Pokemon. This one feels like cheating since it was originally inspired by the Hebrew monster Z's, but it also has some similarities to the Japanese Tatsu. Dragons in China and Japan are not creatures of fire, but more commonly of water and air, and are more known for their great wisdom. One of the first dragon serpents is Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed, 8-tailed water serpent. Dragons in Asian culture seem to have originated in China roughly around 5000 BC, when a dragon statue was discovered in Henan, and one of the earliest dragon artifacts is the pig dragon, which was a small jade artifact from Neolithic China. Rayquaza is part of the Weather Trio, or Elemental Trio. Groudon governs the earth, Kyogre the water, and Rayquaza controls the air. Since they are creatures of order, they are believed to make their home in the heavens, which is fitting for this air-based dragon. As I mentioned with the fox, there is so much cool stuff when it comes to dragon lore, and I might do a video going over all of that, because there is so much and it's so interesting. Originally named Feng Huang, this fiery bird is based on Chinese mythology and was later named Ho in Japan. Side note, this is one of the hardest Japanese words for me to pronounce, so I'm sorry for that. This Pokemon first spawned in Generation 2 and is among many legendary flying Pokemon. Nowadays, it's seen as an amalgamation of all kinds of birds and symbolizes many celestial bodies. The head represents the sky, the eyes as the sun, the back as the moon, wings for the wind, feet as the earth, and the tail represents the planets. This legendary bird is said to only appear in areas that are wholeheartedly kind and full of peace and prosperity. Chinese tradition places its home in the Kunlun Mountains in northern China and has resided there since about 8,000 years ago. This winged creature is all about positivity and is usually a good sign, and doesn't harm anything living and eats bamboo shoots. The Feng Huang also symbolizes the yin in yin and yang, and some people speculate that the other Pokemon, Lugia, the Pokemon that aligns with water and night, being the opposite of Ho-Oh's overarching existence as the yin to its yang. You may not have realized, but Jynx is based on a couple different Japanese ideas. Less obviously, the Yamauba, which is a yokai that has a few different iterations, depending on the region in Japan. All are centered around an either young or old woman who lives alone in the mountains or wanders down pathways in forests, who either lure merchants and travelers into her home, offering hospitality, until the long hours of the night, where she eats them. Other stories say she just outright chases people and tries to eat them. In Aichi, there is legend that says a house possessed by a Yamauba would quickly gain wealth and good fortune. So depending on who you ask, this yokai covers a lot on the folklore spectrum. The second connection Jynx has is to Japanese culture itself, and this is from her original artwork. For those who don't know, Jynx's original character design looked like this. Yep, that is what Jynx used to look like, and there's a reason for this. Yamamba, or shortened Mamba fashion, first became popular in the early 2000s, just after the Ganguro fashion sense, which was more centered around looking cool and confident. Yamamba, on the other hand, had the intention of going against societal norms in Japan, and straying further and further from the clean-cut professional look you see today. The Mamba, Yamamba, and Ganguro styles get pretty convoluted as to what constitutes what into each such genre of fashion, but the most extreme forms of Yamamba was the very dark tans, either done with makeup or actual tanning, and intense makeup and hairstyles. This was very big in the early 2000s, but had quickly faded into obscurity in Japan's culture. But you still may find some people partaking in this fashion sense, albeit less extreme. Nowadays, the more common form of expression that still gives a more flashy vibe is jidaikei, which you'll see a lot of if you ever travel to Japan. So, given Jynx's appearance, the Yamamba style becomes more and more apparent. After some outrage, her skin tone was changed to purple to hopefully avoid any more backlash from the world. I just want to say, if you made it through the entirety of this video, thank you so much. Just writing a script alone took probably like 10 hours total. This being one of my longer videos, it was exhausting but so much fun to do. And I even learned about some new stuff in the process. If I wasn't working so much lately, I would be able to do this much more often, but because I work a lot, I'm trying to balance all that with YouTube stuff as well. So seriously, thank you guys so much for supporting me and being patient during all this downtime. I can't explain how much it means to me. Also want to give a shout out to my friend Hikaru for doing the reading on a couple of these yokai. She has always dreamed of being a voice actress of some kind, so I'm glad she was willing to help me out with this one. This also feels really nice to do something different topic-wise, so if you guys want more of this kind of stuff and more long-form content, please let me know in the comments. I read them all, and I really like seeing what you have to say, good or bad, and I'm always open to suggestions on topics. Also, if any of you are interested, I finally opened up a print shop where you can buy some of my photos and hang them up in your homes, or use them for target practice or something. I'll post a link in the comments if you're interested in supporting me that way as well. As always though, you are all loved and appreciated,
and I'll see you in the next video.